If you hear any of these 5 phrases at work, you need to be running to update your resume, polish your LinkedIn profile, and quit as soon as possible. I bet that you've heard at least one of these and knew that something was off. And this video is going to validate that your gut instinct was right. And in my opinion, the last one is the literal worst. I'm curious if you're going to agree with me. Now, without further ado, let's get into what these phrases are so that you can spot the red flags and act accordingly. The first phrase is one that I bet almost everyone who watches this video has heard. And as soon as I say it, you are literally going to feel your skin crawl. That's just how they are. Actually, I heard this one recently. I was participating in a working group, and one of the men in the group, we'll call him Ted, asked for ideas for the group to solve a problem that he was experiencing. Everyone seemed really stumped, but the answer actually seemed to be pretty obvious to me. Now, I didn't say that, but I did make the suggestion to help him out, and Ted lost it on me, which I was like, fine, dude, you asked and you are not obliged to make sense. And I then pieced out of the session. About an hour later, when the session was done, the session leader, let's call him Ethan, reached out to me. It started off exactly how it should have. He apologized for the behavior, but then he said the toxic phrase that made me instantly remove myself from the group.
That's just how Ted is.
How many times have you heard this from a manager when a toxic coworker acts unhinged? And actually, if you have any particularly absurd tales, spill the tea in the comments. Getting into the weeds on this one, when toxic conduct is being excused, it's not just being tolerated. The toxic behavior is being enabled. My clients have heard this phrase from managers to encourage them to brush off everything from minor yet pervasive insults to extreme harassment and everything in between. And I am being intentionally ambiguous here because YouTube hides my videos when I provide specifics about the more egregious stories. But what is even more dangerous is that it is typically paired with placing the blame on you. Somehow, you are left holding the bag for your coworkers' fuck-ups and misconduct. Your boss will brush off your toxic coworkers' behavior and expect you to keep the peace. But it comes at a cost to you, and that cost is always too high. I want to be abundantly clear here. You should not be expected to tolerate a hostile, toxic work environment because your manager is either too inept or too incompetent to do anything about it. Which actually brings me to the second phrase that is a waving red flag that you need to plot your escape. But first, we need to talk about something that no one else is talking about: the profound impact that these toxic workplace manipulations have on you. They do not just impact you while you're in it. They haunt you after. Over the years, I've heard from tens of thousands of people who have had toxic work experiences, who have shared the immense struggles that they faced after they left. And I personally know a lot of those struggles because I went through them too. As work culture becomes increasingly toxic, unpacking those bags and becoming impervious to workplace toxicity needs to be your number one priority. And I want to make it easier for you. So for a limited time, I am offering free enrollment in my Get Over Your Toxic Job workshop. In it, I am deep diving into the exact steps that you need to take to get over your toxic job. You could snag a seat as long as they're available at toxicjobrehab.com. Which brings me to the second phrase, and this is one my client Sophie heard, and I'm curious how many of you have experienced a similar situation that she did. Sophie was hired into a senior level role at a growing startup to build out an area of the business that she was an expert in. At first, it was a dream. Because of the size of her role, she actually was reporting directly to the CEO. After she started, she sent me a note saying that the CEO was one of the best leaders she had ever encountered in her career. The CEO gave her a ton of autonomy, support, and entrusted her to do what she did best. I was so excited for her, but it didn't take long for the honeymoon to end and for the situation to rapidly descend into a nightmare. Within weeks of her hiring, the CEO had delegated a lot of tasks well beyond her role. Sophie was excited about it, but she was also concerned because of the scope of her role, but she rolled with it. Until one day, the CEO became enraged that she had done something that he had asked her to do. She was actually really confused. She pointed out that he assigned her the responsibility, only for him to reply, "I didn't say that." There are dozens of ways that this phrase shows up, such as, "I didn't agree to that," "I didn't say that," or "I didn't tell you to do that." No matter how it's said, we need to call it what it is: gaslighting. Instead of taking accountability, when your boss utters one of these phrases, they're denying reality to blame shift onto you. And I have heard so many different examples of this, from denying approving PTO requests to greenlighting budgets. The thing is, when you encounter this, you probably don't think twice about it. Actually, I went through this myself at one point in my career where my boss would say something and then instead of backtracking, he would try to rewrite history by denying it. At first, I thought maybe I was wrong because that's that's possible. But when it kept happening, I spotted the pattern. And luckily, so did Sophie. And it also happened not too long after she was hired. Sophie did consult with me about ways that she could approach the situation and manage it, contain the CEO, and survive the job that she was otherwise really excited about. But ultimately, Sophie made the decision to quit. She had already endured one toxic job and done the work in my toxic job detox program to recover from it. She was not going to walk down that path again because Sophie knew this. When leadership will not take accountability, no one will take accountability, and blame culture proliferates, which actually brings us into the next red flag phrase, which when you hear it, what you really need to be hearing is, it's time for me to plot my escape. In my opinion, this is one of the most manipulative phrases because it takes your values and it weaponizes them against you. I thought you were a team player. Again, I can sit here for days giving you examples of times that this has been used to manipulate people into accepting not getting an annual increase, being passed over for a promotion that they deserved and were promised, or working above and beyond the 9 to 5 without any compensation or recognition for it. But recently, my client, let's call her Anne, experienced the brunt of this. Anne had been working for this company for quite a few years. She didn't really love the job, but it was one of those things that it was just good enough. It paid the bills, and she got to leave work at work. But a few months ago, a new manager was hired, and things shifted really quickly. This new manager, we'll call him Blake, replaced her old manager, and there was obviously going to be a learning curve. Blake asked Anne to pick up his slack as he learned the ropes. Anne wanted to make a positive impression on Blake, and honestly, she didn't mind helping, so she did. Then Blake decided that the team was under-resourced, even though Anne and her coworkers had really manageable workloads in general. So he hired a new team member. We'll call her Alice. Again, Blake had no idea how to do the job, so he asked Anne to train Alice. While Anne could handle her job and occasionally cover for Blake's, dedicating time to ramp up Alice was just too much. So Anne pushed back. She was concerned about the workload and being able to meet her deliverables when her days would be spent training, which was not in her job description or in her performance evaluation criteria. That's when Blake started saying it.
I thought you were a team player.
Anne is a good team player. She cares about her coworkers and she truly wants everyone to succeed. So she sucked it up and did it all. But of course, that wasn't enough for Blake. One of Anne's coworkers went out on medical leave. On the surface, this was no problem. Anne had trained Alice and Alice should have been ready to take on the workload. But Alice was useless. And it wasn't because she was clueless. Anne trained Alice and shadowed her work so she knew that Alice was capable. Alice just didn't want to do the work, and Blake bought into her feigned incompetence. So instead of giving the workload to Alice, Blake put it on to Anne, on top of providing more training to Alice.
We're a team here. We step up and help each other.
No matter how it's said, there is a key to every way that this phrase is said. You are always the team player being played. Of course, there are times where it is perfectly reasonable and appropriate to take one for the team. Like when your entire team is staying online late to get a project to the finish line, you are literally all in this together. But being a team player also means that that energy is being matched. It's reciprocal. If it's being weaponized against you, it is a massive alarm bell that you are being taken advantage of at work, especially when it's used with the next phrase that should have you rushing to update your LinkedIn status to looking for new opportunities. This is one I am hearing a lot more from my career besties, especially as the economy and the job market seem to be on thin ice and the labor market is just really being disrupted in multiple ways. And actually, it's one that I even heard when I was working with a bad boss during an economic downturn. Obviously, balance sheets were being blown up, hiring ground to a halt, and budgets were drying up. It was awful. The company I was working for at the time was really being hit hard. My boss was desperate to keep our numbers up, so he mandated unpaid overtime. This was paired with the fact that we were supporting clients who were all being rocked by what was going on, and our contacts that hadn't been laid off yet were basically all preparing for it. They definitely were not finding or increasing budgets for our services. Honestly, it was depressing AF. It felt like I wasn't just swimming against the current, I was being thrashed while people were throwing rocks. On a regular basis, my boss reminded all of us,
You're lucky to have a job.
and we all knew exactly how hard it would be to find another job. So that looming threat of being laid off was really real. So I worked my ass off. I scraped by to meet metrics when others failed, including his golden boy Chad, yet I was criticized for it. While only the numbers mattered, my boss took issue with the exact way that I accomplished them. He would also undermine my accomplishments because apparently he saw the fact that I was the only woman on the team at that point as being an unfair advantage, and I sure assure you it was not an advantage. Not only was I frustrated by all of this, I reached the point that I was done. I started hoarding money, which was really easy to do since I was working all the time and had no time to spend anything I made. In this job, we got paid on Fridays, and I distinctly remember the day that my savings account hit that number that I needed to financially survive so that I could walk away from the job. And if I wasn't saving money at that point, I absolutely would have been like popping a bottle of champagne. And the first thing I did the Monday morning next was walk in and quit. And my boss was shocked. For starters, he didn't see it coming, which, wow, how could you not? But also, we all knew the intricate realities of what I was stepping into. So he tried to manipulate me to change my mind.
You know how hard it is going to be for you to find another job.
I was willing to take my chances. And it worked out. 3 months later, I was in a new job. But here's what actually pisses me off the most about the statement, "You're lucky to have a job." It is lopsided. What I mean by that is they think that you're doing a favor. Like, oh, it's out of the goodness of our hearts that we're giving you this charity. No, you are working at least 40 hours a week. If you're in sales, you know your ROI. And sure, you get your commission, but it's a fraction of what the company is raking. If you're in marketing, you know the pipeline that you drive versus your compensation. I spent years in professional services, and I was always abundantly aware of the fact that my company was billing me out at more than $500 an hour, and I wasn't making anywhere close to that for most of it. Your company employs you because they make more than they pay, full stop. You have the ability to choose where you work, where you invest your time, your energy, and your labor. Good leaders know how lucky they are to have someone as awesome, talented, and full of potential as you on their team, and that your unique abilities are irreplaceable. They should be doing everything that they can to demonstrate how valued you are. On top of that, saying you're lucky to have a job implies that you're not otherwise employable. Fear-driven decisions are not logic-driven decisions. Okay, I ranted about that one long enough. Shout out to everyone who stayed, because there is one last phrase that should have you prepping your resignation letter, even if you can't hand it in right away. And in my opinion, this is the most toxic one. And if you've been around my channel for long enough, you already know exactly what I'm about to say. We're a family. This is the ultimate manipulation tool, because you'll do anything for family. You'll put up with all sorts of BS from family. You'll sacrifice yourself for family. And actually, I have a lot to say about this. To fully unpack this, go and watch this video next. I'll see you over there, bestie.